I mean, I think there's a couple of strands there, Julia, just to unpick. I think the wider message from Wes Streeting is that we've got to be careful about language and the tone of the debate. There's absolutely a debate to be had about whether or not we need an inquiry and why we might need an inquiry. But the language, I think, around some of these whole issues, Elon Musk, the way that he described Jess Phillips, I think was frankly despicable.
Oh, absolutely,
the language that he used. And I think all of us have just got to be mindful of that, because if you start talking about other communities, minority communities, and link that to crime in a kind of generalized way, that can have quite serious repercussions. So it's not to say we can't have a debate and talk about it, but everyone's got to be mindful of language.
Yeah, but likewise, so must the Prime Minister and others when they say people are jumping on a far-right bandwagon when they actually are saying facts.
Absolutely, it goes always. Yeah. It goes absolutely always. Your other point about the inquiry, I think you slightly confused two things there.
One of those was a smaller inquiry, wasn't it?
This was an inquiry by the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, a very wide-ranging inquiry into allegations of cover-up and misconduct by police following the Rotherham grooming scandal. And the suggestion is, well, all of the higher-up officers sort of escaped. They were told not to investigate that. I should say the IOPC has hit back very, very strongly against those allegations and has refuted it. So where the truth lies in that, I'm not in a position to be able to say.
But you're quite right. And as I said, I thought, no, hold on a minute, I'm confusing, because we've had some individual local inquiries. We've had that police investigation into themselves, effectively, an investigation into what the police are doing, and also that Alexis J investigation. But the main argument is, that we've never had a proper full-scale inquiry into what happened in grooming gangs. As I think Kemi Badenoch put it at PMQs last week, joining the dots of what's really going on, what's behind it, why wasn't it tackled, who was responsible, and, basically starting to, prosecute more of the perpetrators, but also tackling the people who enabled it, allowed it, turned a blind eye.
Look, there's an argument about having an inquiry to join the dots. Absolutely. My argument about this is, we still haven't implemented any of the recommendations from the 7-year, £200 million national inquiry into child sexual abuse. And if we start to implement those recommendations and we get to a point where we think, well, there's more work to be done here, there's more stuff that needs to be uncovered, then you might think about another inquiry. I really don't believe that having another inquiry now, paying armies of lawyers to sit around and take evidence, which will take 2 years, 3 years, 4
we're
years.
told 7 years.
It's the right approach. I think there are two things we need to do. At speed, implement those recommendations. I think it's a shame that we're being forced to have this sort of debate about it now. It wasn't in the Labour manifesto. It should have been. That was a mistake.
Well, the Tories should have enacted it.
Make sure the police go after these people. They've got evidence. If necessary, put some of the money you might have been putting into a national inquiry to beefing up the task forces that go after the perpetrators of this abuse, because that is what will stop it. Fundamentally.
I've never understood why it would be so hard to get evidence against men, given that most of these girls are underage. I mean, they're committing a crime it's immediately statutory rape at that point. I mean, Jesus, just give the girls filming devices, for the love of God. They know the houses where this is happening. I mean, the parents, the children themselves identifying where this is happening. Someone go in and put filming devices in. I genuinely don't think it's beyond the wit of man. Where there's a will, there's a way. I have definitely come around to the idea that there does need to be a public inquiry. I think we need to reset how we do public inquiries in this country. Again, the COVID inquiry, absolute waste of time. They're going to be looking into vaccines as of Wednesday. I don't think they're going to get remotely to the bottom of anything. I think it's an absolute waste of time. They're not looking into the real issues. They're still talking, should we have locked down sooner, seems to be the major issue. And someone wrote a rude WhatsApp to Matt Hancock or Boris Johnson. We need to have, they need to be tight time constraints. We need to just speed these whole processes up. But I don't think an inquiry should stop police investigating crimes that have happened previously and are ongoing now. I don't understand remotely why we should allow that to happen. But look, let's move on, because we've also got Labour MPs now, one by one, breaking ranks. They're getting pressure from their mailbags and their constituencies saying, I do want a public inquiry. Andy Burnham, Manchester Mayor, he said at the end of last week that was something he'd be looking at. There is more and more pressure. We saw the government softening slightly. Keir Starmer went from last Monday talking about, right-wing bandwagons and softened even by PMQs. Do you think we will end up getting some sort of national public inquiry, where there is, for instance, evidence given under oath, etc.?
I think it's possible. I mean, certainly there are a number of Labour MPs, and the intervention from Andy Burnham was clearly significant. I think it depends how big it is in the news, in a sense.
Yeah.
And whether we move on to debate other things and look at other things. I do remember, though, back when Theresa May was Home Secretary, and there was huge calls for a public inquiry into the Westminster paedophile ring.
Yeah.
And that sort of gathered momentum. And first of all, the government resisted it, and then they were forced to call a whole national inquiry into, which ended up being the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse that took 7 years. So that there is a slight sense of deja vu here, where the government resists at the beginning and then has to cave into the pressure. I just think it depends, Julia, on the momentum and whether we just move on to other debates.
And Elon Musk moves on to something else. Well, we're all going to be talking about the California fires, talking about the economy, talking about Trump's inauguration a week today. I think things will move on, but I think there's an awful lot of people who are now insisting this does change. Just finally, want to ask you about the rather embarrassing for the Labour government at this time that a former Labour MP, Ivor Kaplan, he's a former Labour minister, former MP for Hove, was arrested, released on bail, accused of engaging in sexual communication with a child, caught in a sort of a sting operation by of a group of activists on Saturday. Claimed they'd arranged to meet him posing as a 15-year-old boy. Obviously, he has been he's been arrested. He's been bailed, released from police custody. This obviously is a live case. We can't discuss rights and wrongs and things that we don't want to in any way impact if there is any future court procedure, but pretty embarrassing for the government, given that the likes of Keir Starmer and others in government all still follow this man on social media, and his social media is, frankly, full of quite extraordinarily explicit pornographic images of men. As a former Labour MP, not that is illegal, as opposed to the allegation against him, which I no doubt he has denied, but it's an embarrassment for the government in the middle of this to have this arrest. No, certainly, isn't it?
Well, of course, I suppose it's embarrassing. I don't know all the details about this case, and I don't want to comment on this case. But
barely made the papers, interestingly.
Yeah, but I think the difficulty is when you get into government, when you have, was it 400 MPs, you have people with connections, the scrutiny is intense. It is so completely different from when you're in opposition, and every single individual, their social media contacts and everything else are scrutinized. The light is sort of unrelenting, and I think that's what the government is discovering, in that every single area in policy, the people they pick, their background, their dealings, their financial dealings. We know about Tulip Sadiq as well. It's unrelenting, Julia, the focus. It's already cost, the Transport Secretary her job. When she was in opposition, I'm sure that kind of scrutiny and focus wasn't there. She was Shadow Transport Secretary. Suddenly, when you've got power, you're in government, everyone is after you, everyone is looking at you, and I think that's what this government is discovering.
But it's quite interesting, people asking difficult questions for a change. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Danny Shaw, appreciate that. Just a quick word from Claire Pearsall.
It's always amazing that the high level of scrutiny comes as a surprise. To anybody.
Should have been more scrutiny of Labour before.
There should have been, and we were all
maybe some questioning of their policies and how they added up.
Yeah, we were a bit slack on it, but they have done this exact same thing to the Conservative Party over 14 years.